Radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Welcome, Fade to Black. Today is Monday, May 8th. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. And tonight we have Ryan Sprague with us. And tonight's episode is brought to you by Accidental Truth. It is the new documentary right now, hit documentary, streaming on all platforms. You can check it out on Amazon. The links are below. Accidental Truth, directed by Ron James. And I'm just going to say it. I'm going on the record. My 8 seconds in the film is what is winning all of the awards. That's right. 8 seconds. It's worth it. Check it out. Accidental Truth. It is streaming right now on all platforms. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, our guest is Ryan Sprague. Now, Ryan, he's got a new book out. His show is called Somewhere in the Skies. Everybody knows that. He's the host of that. And his new book, another book, I'm so proud that he has got the patience and the focus to write a book, because I don't. It impresses me. His new book is called Stories from Somewhere in the Skies. We're going to be getting into all of that. And now he's done a lot of his History Channel. He's done Ancient Aliens. He's the lead investigator and co-host of the Mysteries Decoded on the CW network. And, of course, Somewhere in the Skies. And you can check out everything at somewhereintheskies.com. Other than that, I'm done reading this man's bio. It is so long at such a tender young age. And I would like to welcome back to Fade to Black my good friend, Ryan Sprague. There he is, everybody. Ryan Sprague from England, from the UK, transplant. Ryan, welcome back to the show. We'll get into that in a second. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good, Jimmy. Hey, it's 3 a.m. here, but I told you I got the coffee going, the whole pot here. So I'm excited, man. This is one of my first interviews since my new book came out. So thank you for having me. You're always so supportive.
Yeah, you're the best. I remember. Okay, now I'm not here to embarrass you or anything like that, but I remember when I started to follow you, when you were a roving reporter phoning in from UFO conferences. So I'm here in Austin, and it's great. Stan Friedman just hit the stage, and I'm like, who is this kid, right? And then you went right into a book deal with Richard Dolan, right? And that was fantastic. And then you just took off, man, and just a very impressive run you've had. Great career, of course, playwright, Broadway, all of that stuff too as well. But right on, my brother. It's been really fun hanging out with you over the years, and you've been on the show an awful lot, but it's been a while since you have been here. How did you land? You're in Scotland.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. What's the deal there? Because you kind of freaked out the community.
Yeah, I know. A lot of people thought I was disappearing forever, but it was just one of those moments in life, Jimmy, where the opportunity came and I seized it. My wonderful, amazing partner is getting a PhD here in Scotland, Edinburgh, Scotland. And, we had to make that decision to leave New York City, which was our home for me over a dozen years. At that point, like you mentioned, I was and still am a professional playwright. So, New York is the place to be for that. But the minute the opportunity arose, I said, let's do it. Let's go. And honestly, it's actually helped my career as a ufologist, because Scotland is a weird place. There's so many really cool cases out here. and
You
everything's haunted too.
yeah, you moved to the most haunted city on planet Earth.
Yep. Yeah, I know. I feel like everywhere I turn, there's a ghost.
No, seriously, how does that feel? I mean, it is truly haunted, the city.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, seriously, you walk down any street here, and just the history is just bleeding off of the buildings and the sidewalks. And I've done the ghost tours, that you pay to go see, and all that. But honestly, I just love, turning the corner, seeing a cool building, throwing it in the old Google machine, and seeing what history is there. And you just be amazed living somewhere like here, coming from the States. Everything's so young in America, but my God, man, like every apartment building here is over 400 or 500 years older
Right, right,
than
right.
any building
And
in
you
America.
got one of the biggest castles, that just dominates downtown.
Yes.
That just must be incredible. Could be when you look at the photograph. I haven't been to Scotland, so there's that. But anytime you see pictures of and how it just dominates your field of vision, it is so big and tall, right? And it's
Yeah.
just right there. It must be pretty dramatic.
It is. I still wake up sometimes and think I'm in a dream, but I miss New York like crazy. I miss everyone over on the East Coast. Peter Robbins, one of my mentors. We used to meet every once a month in New York at our favorite, you know, gritty diner in Hell's Kitchen and talk UFOs and in theater. So, there's things I miss about being over there, but it's a whole new life. I've met so many UK based UFO researchers. I'm learning so much about the history of this topic in this country. And it's really only opened the doors for my personal research. I mean,
Well, uh,
even my book has cases from all over the UK. So,
A-
yeah.
Actually, that's where I want to start with you tonight, and I'm glad that you did that. You talk. This is host to host. See, I don't have to do crap tonight. I can kick back, wind up Ryan, and let him go. But I have been asking a few of my veteran friends lately this question, which I'm going to ask you because, and you're special because you have. It's been about 10 years since you started this journey in UFO research, author, TV host, radio host, right? Podcast, everything that you've been doing. So the question is, from 10 years ago to now, and it's even the subject of your book, right?
Mhm.
What have you learned? What is your takeaway today?
I think, I always go back to that. I call it a cliche, but the more I learn, the less I know. And I mean, welcome to ufology. When I first started, man, yeah, cheers to that. When you mentioned I used to do like the roving thing, I would go to these UFO conferences. I would work backstage. I don't care. You want me to sweep the floor? I'll do it. I just want to be at these events and learn from these people who've been studying this topic for forever. Stanton Friedman and all those guys. And even now, some 10 years later, having interviewed them at this point and hearing the same thing, I'm no closer to answers than I was when I first started. It's frustrating, and it does make me sometimes wonder, well, what's the point? Where's this all heading? If we're never going to get the answers, then why do it? And for me, it really comes down to the journey. The people I met along the way, you and so many other researchers, but also the people who've had experiences, as I'm sure we'll get to. That's kind of my ufology. I'm not a field investigator. I'm not, out there looking for trace evidence and all that. I like talking to people. I like hearing their stories, and that's probably been the most rewarding thing for me. It's just the amount of stories that have come to me at Somewhere in the Skies. And yeah, that's kind of what it is, man. The journey for me. It's not the destination.
Well, I follow your Twitter, and it makes me laugh. I follow your social media, and I've done it from the beginning with you, and you're very effective with it, and you're also very funny. But I'm gonna bring up one of your posts this week, and this is where dipping your toe in the water and kind of bracing yourself, for the reaction from you posted about Bob Lazar. Now, haven't you learned one thing? That's the subject you got to leave alone, right?
No,
And so
I don't know what I was thinking.
I know. You did I'm like, okay, this ain't gonna end well. Okay, here we go. So, and I was watching the reaction. He's one of the most polarizing personalities in all of ufology. It's Bob Lazar. There's no real middle road with him. You can't have a middle opinion. It's the two extremes, and the two camps are so well dug in. Nobody's going to give in. Why did you choose to do that? I know why, because of Joe Rogan and Eric Weinstein. I get that. But couldn't you resist the temptation? Was there
Good
a moment?
question.
Was there a moment before you clicked tweet where you went, "Nah, I'm not going to do it"?
Every time, every single time. And I never learn, man. I think, when it comes to this topic, we're all so passionate about it. And we quote unquote passion tweet a lot, where we feel something in the moment and we just want to get it out there. And, I think I was feeling kind of that bug that everyone was feeling with this whole Weinstein and Rogan and Bob Lazar thing. Okay, there's a good example. When I first started in ufology, all in on Bob Lazar. I was
So
a
was I.
believer.
Sure,
Yeah, man.
sure.
And even, further into my ufological career, I still was. In fact, when he spoke at I believe it was the 2013 UFO Congress, like the most well attended yet for them out there in Arizona, because Bob Lazar was going to be there. This guy who never does conferences, never really speaks. And I had the opportunity to work backstage during the event and actually put the microphone on Bob and get him ready to go out on stage with George Knapp to do a talk. And again, I was a young guy in the field. I was nervous. I'm shaking as I put this thing on this like icon of ufology and pop culture, to be
Mhm.
completely honest. And
Sure, sure.
I got a few minutes to talk to him, and he just seemed like a cool guy. And he was nervous to be there and talk and this and that. To make a long story short, I still believed him then. Uh, but as the years have gone on, and I've dug deeper into the story and spoken to other people, um, you know, you start to learn a little bit more, and that starts to kind of strip away, and the skepticism starts to come in. And I think now, as time has gone on, I'm a little bit like you said, that there's no middle ground with Bob Lazar. I went from believer to middle, and now I'm leaning towards I don't believe everything he says, but there's still that small part of me that wants to believe.
I'm right there with you, my brother. I am
Yes.
so right there with you because I was all in for 30 years. 30
Yeah.
years I invested into Lazar. And for me to pull back after 30 years firmly planted, man, I was very confident. I had no issues. And then, things, and I like your meter, right? Because this started to float around for me. And for me to not feel as confident like I used to is a strange feeling for me. It's only happened a couple of times with me with ufology. It happened to me with Billy Meyer. I was all in with Billy Meyer for years, and today I'm not. And it's when I look back, I think about, like you said, the innocent side of me. But today with Bob, this is the thing. What apparently has been requested from Rogan is a sit down with Eric Weinstein and Bob Lazar by themselves,
Right.
right? Nobody else there. And that's a tough one for Bob. Bob, that's, George Knapp is different. George Knapp and him have a relationship that goes back a long ways. And that's an interview that Bob's comfortable with. I understand why. But bringing in somebody like Eric Weinstein to have a conversation about MIT and physics and other things, I don't think it's I'm not sure. I just don't see it happening.
I don't either.
I
And
just,
I wanted to, because I think it'd be a great conversation. I wasn't out to to say, if Bob Lazar does not do this interview, he's a complete liar. He's a fraud. Like, we know these things are not black and white. There's probably some truth to the entire Bob Lazar story and some not. But, you hit the nail on the head, I think. Bob is a nervous person. He's antisocial. I've seen it firsthand. I mean, the way he was right before he went on that stage in 2013. So, in terms of, do I regret the tweet? In some ways, but at the same time, I just want to see them have the conversation. It's
yeah,
not about
dude,
catching Bob Lazar in a lie.
no, I don't think it's about that at all. But
Yeah.
there are some clouds of mystery that need to be cleared up one way or the other. And the only way to do that is something like this. But Bob, at his age, does he care? Does he want to do this or need to do this? If the community wants it, it would be the most watched Rogan podcast. And that says a lot. I mean, he's the most influential podcaster on planet Earth, right? And this would potentially be his biggest show ever. And so, yeah. But the other part about it is this. I love what you said. There's grains of truth, right? I just think Bob, I think Bob might have been at Area 51. I don't know that
Agreed.
for sure. I don't know that for sure, but I think that actually happened. He knew some things, and then he let it get away from him. He let the story become bigger and bigger and bigger, and he let things get away. He didn't know that there was going to be a thing called the internet, right?
Good point.
He didn't know about that stuff, and he let it get away from him. And those are the clouds. Was he actually at Area 51? Yes. Did everything else happen? Oh, I just said yes. I'm assuming, that's a very strong possibility. But everything, I don't know. And
It's hard. Yeah, man. I'm with you. I believe he worked at a facility out there. And I believe a lot of the things he claims, he firmly believes that he saw and he heard. Now, whether he was being played is an entire different story. And I know there's been a lot of talk about that too.
Yeah. He's an enigma for sure. If there's a definition of enigma, it's kind of like Bob Lazar's picture, I think is right there. But that's the other interesting thing. So let's stay right here for a second about what you've learned. Have you seen, your show is called Somewhere in the Skies? Have you had your own sighting?
Yes, I have. Yep.
Okay, let's start there. Have you had more than one?
I've seen, like most people, lights in the sky that I couldn't readily explain, and could have been a satellite, probably. But the event that truly changed me and kind of got me into the field, my origin story, was much more than that, and it was what set me on this path. And
So
yeah, I mean,
what
yeah,
happened?
sure. 95 was the year. I was 12 years old at the time, so I'm aging myself for your audience right now. And I was listening to Green Day on my portable CD player. So that
Dookie.
really brings
Yeah,
it.
that would have been,
Dookie.
yeah,
It was
Dookie.
Dookie.
That was
Thank you.
that was a Dookie summer. I couldn't
It
stop playing
was.
that CD, man.
It was great, man. Yeah, on repeat. I just kept listening to Basket Case. I remember the exact song when this event happened. It was Basket Case. And I was fishing. I would go up to it was called the Fisherman's Wharf Motel in central New York. And I'd go up there every summer with my mom, my dad, and my sister. And I would just fish for hours and listen to music. It was just, that's what I like to do. And I remember one night during the summer, I was reeling my line in, and it was getting dark, so I decided to go in for the night. There was a Yankees game on, so I was going to go watch that with my dad. But when I was reeling my line in, I saw something in what I assumed was in the water. So I kind of looked down and realized there was not something in the water. It was actually above me. So I flip over on my back on this dock, and I looked up, and that's when, I tell people my life changed. I saw a perfect equilateral triangle formation. White light on each point, red light in the middle, kind of that prototypical black triangle, as people call it. And I did not see like the machine or structure to this. I just saw the perfect triangular formation. I couldn't see stars behind it, any of that. So I assumed it was a craft, but it made no noise. Again, just silent black triangle.
Was it
And
moving? Was it moving?
it was just stationary when I saw it. I
Wow.
flip over, I look up, it's just there. And I remember just getting up and yelling for my dad. I didn't know what else to do. I was terrified. I knew this wasn't an airplane because it made absolutely no noise. I'd ripped my headphones off at that point. All I could hear was the water hitting the dock at that time. And just yelling, Dad, 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 come out here, come out here. So he thought I actually fell into the water. So he comes bolting out of the motel, and he actually saw this with me. He saw this triangular UFO, as I'd come to learn the term,
Mm.
above us. And we just both watched as it went from stationary to floating over the St. Lawrence River up there in central New York and disappeared on the other side of the river, which was actually Canada on the other side.
Yeah,
So,
pretty amazing. Okay, so
yeah.
what was his reaction?
Yeah.
And you
So,
were 12. So
yep.
was he like in his 30s?
He was in his early 30s. Yep,
Yeah.
at that
Okay.
time.
So when you think about it now, he's your age now.
Don't
Yeah, right?
remind me.
He was a kid.
Yeah.
He was a kid. He was a kid. So what was his reaction?
Right. And I try to keep that in mind, Jimmy. I'm like, I look at my dad now, and I try to put myself in his shoes at my age now. Like, what would I do if my son and I
Right.
were staring up at a UFO? Um it's probably a lot different for me since I'm a ufologist, but at that time, like, he had no frame of reference. He wasn't into UFOs. Neither was I. I was a baseball player. Like, that's all I wanted to do is play baseball, listen to Green Day. But we both were just staring up at this thing. And I remember distinctly looking up at my dad, searching for an answer, just looking at him like, come on, dude, like, tell me what's going on here. And him having nothing to say. He just stared up and was speechless. And I just remember as the thing went over the water and disappeared, he kind of just stood there, shrugged his shoulders, walked back into the motel, and continued watching the Yankees game.
The Yankees game. What does now that you've got 25, 28 years under your belt between that event and now, and he certainly knows about your career, right?
Yeah.
What's his take on that 1995 event at the at the dock?
Yeah. So, I mean, we didn't talk about it after that night. I mean, it was like it never happened for him. And I remember, I had nightmares, like literally that night and moving forward, nightmares almost every night about the black triangle. And eventually, like a year later, is when I started my UFO career. I was obsessed with UFOs at that point. I ride my bike to the library, take out books on UFOs, and I conducted my first interview with a UFO witness at age 13 with a Vietnam veteran of all people who had a really dramatic Foo Fighter sighting over the Pacific during wartime. And I just remember being on the phone with him for 3 hours,
Mhm.
hearing about his military career and this UFO event. And he actually died like a few months after that and had never told anyone else about the event. So that meant a lot to me. Again, I was 13. Like, I didn't really know what to do with that story, but I held on to it for years and years and years until eventually, I collected enough of these to become an actual UFO researcher. And like you said, as time has gone on, I've really made a name for myself in the field and put in the legwork to earn that. And my father supports the hell out of me. And I feel very fortunate for that. And I remember distinctly in 2017 when the article, the bombshell article dropped and ufology changed. I went home to Syracuse, New York. I went to a bar with my dad and we just laid it all out, man. 5, 6, 7, 8 beers in, we just talked UFOs, my dad and I, for the first time ever, for hours. And we talked about that night. He still has absolutely no idea what it was. Neither do I. We'll probably never know. But everything, man. Roswell, Rendlesham, Calvine UFO, the Tic Tac. It was awesome. It was something I never had really done with my dad, and ufology did that.
I
So
think, I
it's
think,
crazy.
I think a lot of families and friendships around the world did that.
Mhm.
I think it really. I went through it. We I went to a funeral, and after the funeral, this is 2007. It was like a couple of weeks after the New York Times. I go to a funeral, and so we're doing the whatever you call it afterwards, the reception, and we're at a restaurant.
Mhm.
I don't know what you call that at a funeral. There's a word for it. Anyways, so we're at this restaurant, and a bunch of family members and some people that I didn't know, but like a table of 10. And everybody kind of knows what I do, but we never talk UFOs. Man, the conversation that started at this table at the funeral, I was blown away. And my take is everybody thinks about this stuff. They just never had anybody to talk to about it, right?
Exactly.
There was,
Ah,
I sat back. I don't even think I got any words in. I was listening to them
yeah.
discuss this subject, and it was pretty amazing. So yeah, I think it opened up for just about everyone because you just keep it inside of yourself.
Everyone has a story, Jimmy. I'm convinced of that, and that's kind of again, where my ufology really lay, and that's in the stories that people have to tell about this stuff. I'm kind of known as like the witness guy, the experiencer guy. Like if you have a story, no matter how out there it is, uh, Ryan will hear it. He'll at least hear you out. He's not going to tell you what you saw. He's not going to debunk it. He's going to be there as someone who listens. Like, again, as a playwright, that's my job, to listen to people, understand how people talk, what motivates them. And that's kind of what I infused into my ufology, focusing on the individual rather than the UFO or the experience itself. But how did that experience change you? Like you said, I'm sure, no one was expecting to talk UFOs at a funeral reception, but I've had those moments, man, where like, you know, I don't know, an ex-girlfriend from my past all of a sudden is like, "Is this real? Like, I saw something. I want to tell you about it." Or like a friend comes out of the woodwork and is like, "Hey, I thought you were weird when we were back in middle school when you were talking about UFOs, but now this is real, man. Like, I think I might have seen something. Can I tell you about it?" And it's awesome, man.
Yeah,
We've been vindicated in
it
so many
happens.
words.
It happens to me all day, every day.
Yeah.
Right? I've got a lot of friends that knew me from the past. We're all friends on Facebook and Twitter and stuff, and they find my email. That I never for 50 years talked about UFOs. Now they've all got a story. They're
Yeah.
all texting me. They're PMing me. They're private. They're this. They're that. It's hilarious. And it's like, what? Where's this coming from? My roommate, right after high school, his name's Bruce Pfeiffer. He's probably listening right now. Bruce and I go way back, right? Really close friends. So this show starts, and or it's coast to coast or something. He calls me after listening to me. Calls me on my phone. He goes, "Hey man, did I ever tell you the story about the UFO that landed in our backyard in Indianapolis when I was a kid? And I watched it from my bunk bed." I said, "What?" And he tells me this whole thing. I'm like, I've known you for 50 years.
Wow.
And you're coming at me now with this, and he said, we all saw it, and this was in my neighborhood, where I grew up, and just incredible. But it's because of this show and the climate that now friends can reach out to friends and talk about this. And I ended up bringing him on Fade to Black, and I had him tell the whole story.
Wow, full circle.
Yeah, and that never would have happened if it wasn't for the New York Times. Think about it.
Yeah. And say what you will about what's happened post 2017. I know it's turned a lot of UFO researchers off, but it's also invited a lot of new researchers into the field. People who came just because they read that story or they saw the documentary about Bob Lazar, or again, say what you will about either of those topics. Post 2017 ufology or Bob Lazar, it brought a lot of new voices into this conversation, which personally, man, I think we desperately needed for a long time. Like, I was once one of the youngest UFO researchers, not the case anymore,
Yeah,
not by a long shot.
No,
And
you're the old man in the room now.
I am, and
Yeah.
that's okay. I think that's great, and it's exciting and invigorating, and I think it's pretty cool what's happened. No matter, again, wherever ufology's heading with the government and all that, that's a whole other conversation. But it's brought a lot of people to the forefront that have something to say and have a story to tell, and that's what I continue to do with the work that I do, is give them a platform to do that.
In a minute, we're gonna. The new book is out, right? It's called Stories from Somewhere in the Skies, and it sounds like I'm going to stay where we are in the conversation right now, but it sounds like it's an easy book to write, where you can go back to the best of my podcast and go through and do that. It probably wasn't that easy. You've got a lot of material to select from. Did you have an idea of what you wanted to put in the book, or was it your personal favorites? I mean, how do you select, because you've done so many shows?
Yeah. So I run a series called Witness Accounts, again, where you just can call in and tell your UFO experience. And I wasn't sure how it would go over when I first started the podcast, but we're almost up to 30 volumes now of Witness Accounts. And in each episode, there's like 5, 6, 8 stories of people who literally just call in and tell their story, uninterrupted. I'm not involved. I don't interview them. I don't question them. Just in their own voice, tell the story and how it made them feel. And I think that really resonated with people and listeners. And as that series continued, more and more people started calling into the show and telling their stories. So I was up to about 30 of these, and I'm like, there's something here. Like there's I feel like there's stories that need to be heard further than just in the podcast. And that's when I reached out to my publishers, Beyond the Fray Publishing, and said, "Hey, I've got an idea for a new book. I think it could really resonate with people. Let me know what you think." And I said, "It's just stories from my podcast." And they're like, "Yep, do it. Like, we're all in." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." And like you said, I thought it'd be easy, just take the transcriptions from the podcast, find some cool stories and put it in. But I mean, hundreds of stories. And I had to whittle it down to, I think there's exactly 50 in this new book. And it's like trying to, again, choose your favorite child. I know that's a cliche, but it's true. And it was hard. It was really hard. And then to try to structure it into a book was even harder.
Well, sure. And what about when you hear so many different experiences? Did you see a trend versus your own personal experiences and what you think the phenomena may be? Nuts and bolts craft to interdimensional plasma wormholes. I mean, we've got the full length and breadth of what things may be. Were you seeing that in the experiences and also what you've learned?
There are trends, absolutely. You know, we're human. We look for patterns, and when looking at the stories and trying to choose them, yeah, I mean, I'd find similar craft or even locations where a lot of these things happened. Um, but for me, I really with the book, I wanted to actually highlight the opposite of that. I wanted to show kind of the vast array of phenomena occurring in our skies. So I didn't wanna try to find, you know, um, that one single source of UFOs because I know it's not there, you know it's not there. It's UFOs are a million different things.
Hmm.
So when in writing the book, I think maybe I first set out to find those patterns, but by the end, I realized that's not what this is about. Whatever these phenomena are or aren't, they're dramatically affecting these individuals in many, many different ways and changing them. And that's really what it boiled down to for me. So I didn't really set out to find a pattern with the book. I really wanted to show how weird this stuff is. I mean, this book has some crazy stories, Jimmy, not just like your typical what I saw triangle or even a saucer. There's some stories in this book that I for lack of a better term are sound crazy.
Right.
But that actually speaks to me more than just hearing the same prototypical thing over and over again. I tend to lean more into the weirder stories and I guess, dare I say the word, believe these people even more because of how strange
Well,
the certain aspects are.
but Ryan, that not only is that okay, that's the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
One of the things that bothers me, especially with the skeptic and some parts of social media UFO investigation, I'll leave that to your imagination. When they say, and everybody sees something different, that's the problem. Everybody's what? Yeah.
Mhm.
What, you want everything to be exactly the same? That wouldn't make any sense. And then I think we have an easier explanation if everything was exactly the same, because there's no way that it can be. And the Tic Tac, when it came out, the descriptions of it from David Fravor and others, just everybody that came forward about this, they described something that was never really out there in ufology also before. It was like a singular, and here it is, something completely different. And that is like, welcome to the world of ufology. This is what we have here. It's got to be millions of civilizations interested in planet Earth, not one.
Yeah. And leave those patterns, Jimmy, honestly, in my opinion, leave those to Arrow. Like, leave those to the people who are trying to find patterns and repeatability and trying to resolve these UFOs. I'm not out to resolve these. I'm here to give some sort of closure
Mm,
to these individuals who've
mm,
had experiences. And you mentioned another thing, and that's kind of perception of these events and interpretation. One of my heroes is Jacques Vallée, who looked heavily into that. How perception and interpretation play a huge part in this field, and how different people see things completely differently. Again, stories in this book and in my previous book show that how a mother and a daughter can stare up at the same UFO and describe it completely differently. Um, Crazy stories like that of seemingly looking at the same thing, but interpreting it completely differently. It's very interesting.
well, Jacques, for years, going back to the 70s, he had the nuts and bolts things too, as
Mhm.
well. I mean, he was around for Socorro and some other events, and including Brazil and Argentina and stuff, where physical craft came down and land and trace evidence. There was that, but he also, for almost 50 years, talked about another phenomenon. Another way to approach this, another way to look at it. And as loud as he screamed about this and wrote about this book after book, it didn't really catch on in ufology. It today we're all like, Jacques was right, but back then I think it was a bit too much for our level of understanding to kind of accept something interdimensional or something, caused from consciousness or entanglement, or maybe it's even quantum physics and something, very small. And Jacques knew things, and he looked at it from a different set of eyes. But it took a long time for that to catch on, didn't it?
It did, and I have people to thank like him for kind of stepping on those landmines before people like me or other individuals who do work similar to mine. I can't pretend that like I'm the first to cover the human side of UFOs by any stretch of the imagination. But you got someone like Diana Walsh Pasulka, actually, who wrote the foreword to my book. She actually compared, and I will have to respectfully disagree with her. She actually compared my work to Jacques Vallée, and that was like the biggest compliment I could have ever um, um, received, and I felt very humbled by that. But I do kind of work in the shadow of people like that who want to look at the human side of this, the cultural aspects, the sociological uh, aspects to a lot of this, and that's kind of where I'm at, man. Again, like I think when ufology first started back, whatever the modern era, let's say
Mm,
50s, 60s, 70s.
mm.
Um, it was very nuts and bolts. We wanted to resolve the issue. The US government wanted to solve the UFO mystery. Where now I feel we're kind of seeing that with everything going on in the government, but there's also this other side to this entire conversation of it being unsolvable, and that we're never truly going to know what UFOs are, and that's okay. That's okay. We can strive for disclosure in one way, but the mystery is going to stay alive in some respects, and that's kind of the ufology I choose to pursue.
Now, what do you mentioned Arrow? I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this because I want to get back to the book, but I don't think Arrow has anything to do or any desire for the ET aspect of this. Um, the somebody else's problem statement, a few times from Kirkpatrick kind of spelled that out. If they're not going to figure it out, they're going to make it somebody else's problem, or to resolve it to make it somebody else's problem.
Mhm.
But that's Arrow's thing. I don't think Sean really, Kirkpatrick, I should call him Sean like I know him. Kirkpatrick, I think the UFO community has got the wrong view of Arrow and what they mean to the UFO community. I don't think they're connected.
They're not, in my personal opinion, at all, and that's okay. Again, Arrow is, no matter if we like it or not, is a part of ufology. They are looking at aerial phenomena.
Mhm.
However, like you said, nothing in that Senate UAP hearing had anything to do with the ET hypothesis. I don't know why people would have expected that. We have individuals in the field who claim that Kirkpatrick knows about crash retrieval programs and this and that, and if he doesn't bring it up now, like we're not giving him another chance. Strike 1, 2, 3 in a row, man. And he didn't. And he said, "We have found no evidence whatsoever that any of this is
Zero,
ET."
zero,
Zero.
and there were. Now, I'm not going out on a limb here. Okay, there were a lot of people that were expecting him to roll out a great ET on a gurney, right? Just go, here he is. And then I mean, it was those kinds of expectations that you're referring to. The
Well,
expectations were really high.
right. And we should know that by now, Jimmy, that anytime the government gets involved, it's not going to be that moment of disclosure we all want. Maybe. I can't, brush it off 100% ever, but let's give him some credit. He said, "Hey, if we do find any possibility of ET, that's when we move it over to NASA, kind of the front and face of something like that. And we deal with them and tell them, this is what we found. Like you said, now it's someone else's problem." Arrow's not there to tell us UFOs are extraterrestrial, interdimensional, time travelers. They're there to serve the government. They're there to resolve national security issues like the spy balloons that occurred in the US recently, stuff like that. Unfortunately, that is now a part of ufology. So was Project Blue Book. So was the first congressional hearing. So was all of that stuff. ATIP. We can't escape it. It's a part of ufology no matter what. But at the same time, there's a whole other huge thing happening here. And that's things that can't be identified, that can't be resolved. And I find that exciting that there's still, no matter what Arrow finds or doesn't find, there's still a mystery to pursue and things far greater and far more mysterious than just a spy balloon out there.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
that's right.
convinced of that.
You're right about that. And then we have a whole other thing that doesn't involve Arrow at all, which I expect to bubble to the surface in a very radical way very soon. That's crash retrievals. Because that's not Arrow. This is already on the ground, right? This has nothing to do with Arrow. But the chatter about this, having Wilson Davis mentioned in the first UFO hearing, to have Eric Davis with that quote that was attributed to him in the New York Times, and this has been brought up in Washington D.C., independent of our own community, a few times now.
Mhm.
Where I think that the focus is going to definitely be: is there a program, an SAP out there? Has there been a craft, one that was traded like a used car? I don't know how we would have acquired one, but is that the case? And I expect a hearing on this. There's just too much chatter. I don't know if it's going to go anywhere, but that's something completely independent of Arrow. Do you think the government is sitting on this information?
Possibly. I don't like to work in absolutes when it comes to any of this stuff. Obviously, I've made those mistakes in the past, and we're all proven wrong at some point in this field. It's kind of like Bob Lazar. Like, yeah, I want to believe there's crash programs, and there probably are. You look at something like Project Moondust in the past, where this was a program that was there to retrieve space debris. Stuff that could have been Russian, stuff that could have been, an adversarial spy balloon or anything like that.
Satellite, sure.
Satellites, yeah. But they also possibly retrieve things that weren't those and were still unexplainable. So, I mean, there are examples in the past that these things are real, have been real. And I do believe, and I know you and I speak to the same people who, off the record, say, I know for a fact there are crash retrieval programs. And at that point, it's either you take their word for it or you just wait and see. And there are individuals in the field who say in the next 6 months, we will hear directly from individuals who are blowing the whistle on this crash retrieval thing. In fact, some of them have possibly spoken to Arrow about this. So at this point, all I could say is let's wait and see. If that's not the case, then we just move on with the topic as usual and continue looking at it. But a
Well,
lot of people are making claims right now.
Well, certainly, and you, with your experience with your father, and I've never seen a black triangle. I photographed one, but at the time when I photographed it, it was just a black dot in the sky. I didn't see that it was a black triangle until the film. Yes, I said it. Film was developed. It was that long ago. But I haven't seen my own black triangle. You have, and do you connect that dot to backwards engineering, from a crash retrieval craft? Because if that is ours, that, what you witnessed, which there's a strong possibility that it was, well, then where does that technology come from? And
Right.
quite possibly would come from, something that wasn't built on this planet, right?
Yeah. Um, I actually had a conversation. I was in London, and Lou Elizondo happened to be there at the same time. and we finally met face to face for the first time. It was cool meeting this guy who, was all over the news and talking about having worked on a secret Pentagon UFO program, blah blah blah. We know that history by now. But I got to walk around, London with this dude for over an hour, and I think maybe like 10 minutes of it was talking about UFOs. The rest of it was just talking about life, getting to know one another. It was really rewarding experience. However, when we did talk about UFOs, I told him about what I'd seen, the black triangle, and I straight up asked him, I'm like, in your experience, we've got the tic tacs, we've got the saucers, we've got the triangles. What do you think these different things represent? And he's told me, he said, the triangles are ours. And he's gone on record and said this to other people. I can't pretend like this was,
Mm-hmm.
a little thing between Elizondo and I. The triangles are ours, but the technology isn't. And that kind of stopped me in my tracks. I never really thought of it that way. That yeah, this probably is some sort of black budget project using technology. Either we did not develop, or we don't fully understand yet. And yeah, I mean, what craft hovers stationary, takes off with no noise, and disappears out of sight within seconds? I can't tell you. Maybe it's out there, but I don't personally know of it. So yeah, I found that answer he gave me thought provoking, to say the least.
Now, what do you make of the chatter right now? I have had some pretty dramatic interviews lately, and even more dramatic phone calls and emails that are all suggesting the same thing, that we are months away from some crazy ass shit, right? And what do you make of this chatter? It's never really been quite like this, and I believe that, and I don't use bad language on this show, but I think it's that's where we are right now. Where there's smoke, there's fire. What do you think's going on?
I think more and more people in the intelligence community, or even the military, are feeling more empowered to finally talk about these things. And I think this whistleblower legislation that was put through in law recently has a lot to do with that. And there's a lot of different people bipartisan to thank for something like that. And I think this is a time where we're going to start getting these people on the record talking about programs they've worked on in the past. And we've been waiting for this for a long time. And I don't know where I personally land on any of it, whether I believe it or not, but that's kind of why I still go with let's wait and see. Um, Whatever this chatter is, whatever you and I have heard and others have heard, um, there's something there. There's absolutely something there. I don't think these people would put their reputations on the line to make such a big claim and give a timetable. Like, they're literally giving timetables.
Yeah. They are.
So
Yeah.
there you go, man. If that time comes and goes, and we're no closer to any of this stuff coming out, um, then it's up to you to decide whether you will ever believe that person again, or if this is just yet another hiccup in ufology that we've gotten a million different times before. I don't know.
Is the world ready though?
Oh man.
How many times do you get that question? I get it 10 times a day.
Yeah.
I just got back from Vegas and I had some alone time there, and complete strangers, right? That I hadn't met before, that know a little bit about me and stuff. So, dude, can the world handle it? I'm like, and I get asked all the time, but I want to hear it from you. What do you think? You come from a different generation, and that's
Mhm.
why I enjoy not only what you do, but your outlook and your take on things. It's a little bit different than I'm pretty cool for an old guy, pretty cool.
Yes, you are.
But I'm not a cranky old. I'm not that dude yet. I'm getting close. But you have a different take. And so what's your what are your friends saying? Do you think that the world is ready?
Yeah, I do. And maybe it is a generational thing. But I grew up in the age where yeah, like it actually I grew right on the cusp of when it was like accepted that life definitely exists somewhere else out there. There's too many people saying yes, credible scientists saying mathematically it's impossible for it not to exist. So I think, the younger generations have that luxury being like, yeah, totally, it's a given. Like, things have probably come here. Yeah, for sure. So I do think the world's ready. I mean, look at the stuff we've been through in the past few years alone, and we're resilient. We've made it through catastrophes that we haven't seen in a very long time, in good ways and bad.
Yeah,
You
you're
know,
right about that. Check out this comment. I find this very interesting. This is from Susan. She says, "Rip off the Band-Aid," right?
hmm,
And that's my generation would say that. Your generation probably really doesn't care that much because you've grown up with it around you more. For us, it's like, okay, rip off the Band-Aid, take what comes. It's going to sting for a minute. But I don't think your generation I don't think it's going to sting at all.
I don't think so. Again, I feel like w- we we don't give enough credit, I think, to the younger generation. Sometimes we look at them as like these zombies on their phones 24/7 and doing nothing else but going on Instagram, blah 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 blah. Kids these days. But at the same time, I think growing up in the age of the internet, it obviously has its pros and cons. I think people in the younger generation do have really good critical thinking skills. And when it comes to this topic, you need critical thinking. And I think a lot of the younger people can really see, what's BS and what isn't. I honestly do believe that. So I think, yeah, the younger generations, they're ready. They're willing to accept that this is a possibility. And where it goes from there, I can't tell you, but I can only imagine where ufology will be, in the
Check
next
out
couple
this.
years.
This is from Dennis. He runs my Twitter, right? He says, Dennis, I love you, brother. I love you. I only read the first line. He says, no, the world is not ready. Look at America, Russia, Ukraine, China, etc. We are not even open to talking with one another, never mind an alien presence.
Mm,
Truer words have never been spoken, right? And that is, I think that we could handle the truth, but talking about it as friends and uniting the world, no, that part, I don't think we're in, that Ronald Reagan mindset, right?
right.
With his famous quotes. And thank you for that, Dennis. You're man, kind of squashed my mellow, dude.
Hey, I mean, it's a good point. I understand what he's saying. I have hope. I always have hope. I'm one of the most positive people in ufology, whether I like it or not. That's what people see me as. But I have my moments of cynicism and whatnot. So I get it. I totally understand that. We look at the world today. We look at our responses to the pandemic. We look at what's going on in Russia and Ukraine and China. And of course, there's moments where I'm like, "Oh god, you throw UFOs into all of that and it's just a bad, bad soup." But at the same time, I do wonder, could it benefit us in many ways? Could it bring us
Yeah,
together?
yeah. Well, there's that. Okay, in a second, everybody, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to jump into the book. We're going to go knee deep into that. But on the flip side, what a great time for disclosure because of all the other stuff that's going on, and so you can bury it in these crazy headlines.
Absolutely. I mean, look at when all these headlines really happen. They happen on a Friday, after some huge political scandal drops, or smack dab in the middle of the pandemic, or this or that. So you do truly have to wonder the strategy behind doing something like that. I can't pretend to have answers, but I find it curious to say the least.
Dennis just posted. He says, I'm popular. You know, you're such a happy guy, such a positive guy that you could say the world is ending with a smile. It is kind of true. All right. Let's take a break here. Where can everybody get the book? Somewhereintheskies.com?
Absolutely. Yep. It's on Amazon, paperback and ebook as well.
Okay. Let's take a quick break right here. We'll be right back. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. Please visit all of our sponsors. We're taking a quick break here. All of the links are below. We'll be right back. This is Jimmy Church, and I want to introduce you to Life Waves X39 Stem Cell Activation Patch, which has totally transformed my health, my sleep, brain, and my eyes. I no longer need reading glasses. X39 is the true breakthrough in regenerative science. Using light, X39's patented age reversal technology is clinically proven to signal the activation of younger stem cells, accelerating the body's natural healing process. X39 promotes restoration and rejuvenation, bringing the life-changing benefits that I've experienced. By naturally elevating a master signaling peptide in the body, X39 boosts vitality, health and wellness, and resets 4,000 genes to a younger, healthier state. It's one patch, once a day, and you can turn back time with X39. Just go to healingworksnow.com. That's works with an X. healingworksnow.com.
Hey everybody, it's Billy Carson, also known as Forbidden Knowledge. I want to talk to you about a very special event coming up July 30th, 2023, the Forbidden Conscious Awards. We're going to honor people who have been contributing to the conscious community for decades. People that you know and love that have helped you get to higher levels of thought and consciousness and awareness. It's going to be a live in-person event, but seats are going to sell out very fast. You want to make sure you're there in person, and guess what? You can help vote for the winners. Voting is available on forbiddenknowledge.com, and the categories are going to be social media influencer, podcast/radio host, TV host, actor, director, producer, entrepreneurs, health and wellness, philanthropists, authors, field researchers, archaeologists, space anomaly hunters, and of course, a Lifetime Achievement Award. I'll be your keynote speaker that night at the Forbidden Conscious Awards. We have celebrity guests performing. We'll have a halftime show where we're actually going to perform music for you. And don't forget about the pre-event mixer, where if you buy a box seat, you'll be in the VIP section, and you also have private access to a VIP mixer with celebrity guests. Shake hands, break bread, network, and then walk the red carpet with us and take amazing photos. It's going to be a night to remember. You don't want to forget this. Make sure you hurry up and get your tickets because they're selling out very fast. I want to see you there. Forbidden Conscious Awards 2023.
River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon Wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com. Yeah, Fade to Black. I'm your Jimmy Church. That's right, LifeWave X39. There it is, man. It just worked right here on the back of my neck. That's it. Nobody can see it. I'm not wearing it on my... No. It's right on the back of my neck. It's absolutely incredible. I'll put the link up in the chat. It's over on social media and on our website too as well. But LifeWave. Somebody said, Jimmy, are you aging backwards because you look younger than Ryan Sprague? And I said, yeah, of course I do. It's that LifeWave, man. I got to keep up with the kids these days. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I got to do what I got to do, man, at my age. Yeah, I look what happened to me in the last 10 years of doing this.
This field will age you quick, man. But I think we've both done a good job of staying young at heart, if anything else.
Staying young. I got my Ryan Sprague scruff on, trying to look.
You're doing much better than I am. Yeah.
So, you know what? We're going to move on. We're going to get right to the book. But I remember the video and Ryan's so good at social media. He likes to walk down the streets of New York. He's got his phone out. He's doing a live stream, and he's strutting down Fifth Avenue. And he goes, "Okay, I'm moving to England." I was like, "What? What did he just say?" "I'm moving to the UK." And then you said something like next week, right? I was like, "Where's this coming from?" And I thought, no, we can't lose Ryan. What's going on? But yeah, that was it was a funny video. I go back and I've watched it a couple of times since. But yeah, it threw the community into a tailspin there for a second, my friend.
Yeah, I was just in as much shock as you were, man. It was very sudden, and like I said, even off air, it life takes you in directions you'd never expect, and I had a lot of
Why do you
thinking to do when that happened.
Why do you always break news on the streets of New York? Do you think it adds drama?
Yeah, yeah, I've got like the Times Square ball in the background. I mean, come on, what bigger platform
I
could I
know,
have?
right. Okay, so the book came out last week, and I am. What I thought I would do tonight, if that's okay with you, is I'm going to pull out, like you said, you've got 50 different events or experiences here that are here. I'm going to pull out some stuff at random, but I'm going to pull it out for the shock value of the title of the story. Okay,
Gotcha.
sound good? Good. Because some of this I have no idea. Everybody, not that I want to hear. I've got the bubbling black blob of Fife. I mean, who doesn't want to hear that story? But anyway, there are some really cool things here, and I have no idea what they could possibly be about. Now, I'm not going to go in order. I'm just going to pull this out in random. One of them I mentioned to you earlier today, so I kind of actually want to start there.
Mhm.
There be dragons.
Okay, so and you'll have to forgive me, Jimmy. This is my first interview since the book came out, and I love how you're putting me on the hot seat. So if I get any of the facts wrong on these, please forgive me. I hope your audience is.
Go get the book. Go
Yeah.
get the book, everybody, and then bust his chops.
There we go.
But see,
Yeah,
right now nobody knows, so you can say whatever you want.
that's
But
a good
there,
one.
there be dragons.
There be dragons. Yeah. So this was one that happened to a gentleman named Brandon. And this was back. I want to get this right. In times of time and date. 2019, this event happened. He was actually in Virginia when this occurred. And, kind of sets up like most UFO sightings, driving down the road, sees something, stops and takes a look. But what was really interesting about this one was when he got out and looked at this UFO, it was literally a tic tac. It was white, it was oval, it looked exactly like how Dietrich and Fravor have described the Tic Tac, and it made very similar movements. It was descending, ascending very quickly, almost as if it was jumping through, teleporting into different areas in the sky. And what was really interesting about this one is he wasn't alone. Other people were stopping their cars out there in Virginia, getting out, and they're all watching this Tic Tac in the sky do these unbelievable maneuvers. And Brandon actually got video footage of this that he shared with me. And unfortunately, like most videos, it does not do justice to what the story actually is. That's usually the case with a lot of this. But I appreciated him sending that to me to show proof that something happened. He saw something. He tried to record it. But again, it really boils down to the story for me. And this one was really interesting. And the
What?
reason.
Oh,
Well,
okay. Here it comes. Okay, you already know the question. Okay, go ahead.
the reason for the title, as I'm sure you were going to ask, is the way he kind of described it. And I have a quote here pulled up. He said, "It was crazy. Like if a dragon flew over your head, it just completely changes your reality in that moment." And that's kind of where I pulled the titles from a lot of these stories. It wasn't so much what the UFO was. It was these quotable things that these individuals brought to me about how the experience made them feel or what it was like. And that's why I decided to call this one There Be Dragons, because of just that. Seeing
Yeah,
something that shouldn't exist
right.
exists.
What do you think of? I want to talk. Go back to James Fox for a second, because one of the things that this community has always had the benefit of is video, eyewitness video. Shaky, blurry, good, bad, whatever. But we have that now. We have cell phones all over the planet. That's a really cool part of this. In the Varhinia case, there's always been chatter about a film existing and something out there. If that came forward with something as big as of a film as Making Contact has been for James Fox, do you think that would do you think, like, the possibility of something surfacing, and would it move the needle?
Yes, absolutely. I think a portion of the public would accept it and another portion wouldn't. Unfortunately, we live in an age where anything can be faked at this point. And, it's frustrating because while videos and photos were once like the evidence that ufology used to try to prove something, it's almost done nothing but work against it at this point. And I find that a very fascinating kind of I don't know, devolution in the entire ufology.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't know. While I would hope a video surfacing of something like that
I mean,
would help.
to tie it all together. What if we had
Yeah.
a video, to go with Rendlesham?
Mhm.
What if we had a video to go with Travis Walton? What if we had a video? Even the video of the Phoenix Lights wasn't enough, right?
Yeah.
It's cool, but it supported the eyewitness testimony, but it wasn't the definitive video. And the real videos that were out there have disappeared. I've watched 2 videos from the Phoenix Lights that I can't find anymore. They're
Mhm.
they're gone, and they were absolutely incredible. But yeah, we need something that ties a case together, like the Varhinia case, where now you have this, you have the eyewitness testimony, you have all this other anecdotal evidence, that sits on the outside. But if something like that surfaced, I yeah, and
Yeah.
even the Patterson Gimlin film, right, the Bigfoot footage, as great as that is, that didn't make people believers,
Hmm.
right? That were on the fence with Bigfoot, and
There
that's a great piece of footage, man.
Absolutely. It's probably one of the best. I think it's, up there with the JFK video is one of the most famous videos of all time.
No doubt, no doubt.
So I get it. Like there will always be a place for video evidence. There's even James Fox in the past few days has come forward saying, I've seen the most amazing UFO video out there. And now what happens with that case? Now a famous YouTube star and WWE wrestler Logan Paul is the one in possession of this video. Quote unquote, he stole it. So
It-
that whole thing is weird too. And it's
yeah,
like,
you know what's weird about that? Okay, I'm sorry to get off of your book,
no, not at all.
but we're gonna get right back on it, because this next title is crazier than the first one. But of all the people, Logan Paul, really? And is it now? Here's the thing with Logan Paul. He's about clicks. Are UFOs that valuable now? Right? Right. Think about that. That's the aspect that I'm fascinated with. Not is the video real or fake or this, or did he steal it, and the drama that is unfolding on Twitter. It's not about that. I think what's more fascinating is pop culture and what these influencers consider clickable.
Mhm.
And in this case, Logan Paul, and he's got quite the following, and he knows how to create drama. He's really good with it. It's UFOs that now are clickable to that world. Don't you find that interesting?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anytime UFOs are in the news or whatnot, like they make a splash. They always do. I mean, I always go back to the Chicago O'Hare incident. When that story first hit the pages of the Chicago Tribune, I believe it was,
Mhm.
their online edition, it crashed their website. They'd never seen traffic like that ever before, and it was a UFO story. Same could be said about the 2017 story in the New York Times. Like, this topic will always have the public's attention when something hopefully credible comes forward. So it doesn't surprise me that now, someone like Logan Paul is involved in the world of UFOs. I struggle with that every day. First, he stepped on my WWE. I'm a huge wrestling fan, Jimmy. Always have been, always will be.
Oh, the
And now he's stepping
W
on ufology.
yeah, I saw the WWF comment that you made.
Yeah.
That was,
So
the World Wildlife Fund.
yeah. I know. They had to change their name. I think
I'm
it was
telling
back in
you
the 90s.
I'm telling you, I follow you, man. I read your
You
stuff.
do. I appreciate that.
It's really
But yeah, I think, clicks, likes, follows, that's just the world we live in now. And it's, hey, if Logan Paul's going to be the one to disseminate the greatest UFO video of all time, that's the world we live in, and we just have to accept it. Will it get more eyes on the topic? Absolutely. But then where does it go from there? That's the big question.
well, it'll be on his boxing shorts.
Yeah.
The next pay-per-view. That's
Yep.
It'll be on the back. Or maybe a tattoo. Maybe a tattoo.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can see it.
So you never know. All right. Now I hope I'm saying this right. But it caught my eye. Das Dreieck über Hud.
Ooh. So that's clearly one of the German stories. I've got a couple in the book. Let's see. That one, I believe, is yes. Okay. This is an individual, two German guys came to me around the same time, which I found very interesting. And both had black triangle stories to tell, which I found fascinating as well. We hear about the black triangles a lot in America, or the Belgian wave, obviously, was a big one. But this one came to me from a gentleman in right on the border, actually, of Germany and France, and like literally on the border. This dude worked border control. Um, and he and his girlfriend at the time had a very dramatic triangular UFO sighting where this thing came down is and was within like 200 feet of them. And he describes in the book, how close it was. He could see the seams, he could see the skin of the craft.
Wow.
And it just hovered there. He had very interesting physiological effects, like his entire body was vibrating during this event. Um, and he just distinctly remembers this thing almost doing like a Star Wars or a Star Trek like warp speed thing. It just slingshotted up into the air and disappeared and left like this straight line of light behind it as it disappeared into the sky. Um, so yeah, that was an interesting one because again, I had two different people from Germany come to me and have very similar incidents around the same time. So I do have to wonder, was this part of a triangular UFO wave in Germany? Possibly. But they didn't mean to do that, as far as I know. It was just happenstance that two different people from the same country came to me and told me these stories. So yeah, that was an interesting one. If you were talking black triangles.
Yeah, and talk about waves. What happened to abductions? And I do think about that.
Mhm.
Now, are they occurring still, right? Like tonight, while you and I are just, somebody's getting abducted, and we just don't hear about them anymore. Are they happening differently? Is the mind not remembering them, or is it just a phase that was real? Of course, I mean, some of the most incredible cases ever have occurred,
Mhm.
supported by piles of evidence. But we don't hear about them much anymore. Do you?
No. And I've asked myself that question a lot recently too. In my first book, back in 2016, I had a couple abduction stories, and some of them were quite recent in the book. However, I feel like you're right. We don't hear about them anymore, and you do have to wonder: are we just not hearing about them, or are they not happening? And I forget who it was I spoke to recently who I asked that question to. It might have been an actual abduction researcher, but they told me, honestly, I feel like whatever intelligence or source lay behind the abductions, they're done. And it was the most simple, profound answer
Yeah,
that could have came to me. I'm like,
I
they're
have no
they're
issue.
they're done with what they needed to do, and they've moved on.
I have no issues with that.
Yeah,
Except, right? Except suddenly we got cattle mutilations in Texas, right? And I
yeah,
thought I thought that had kind of phased out.
yeah.
And I kind of feel that, were you surprised to see that headline come out of Texas? No, it was 6, but they amended it because after that story broke, they found a 7th mutilated cow in the same area. Were
Oh
you
wow.
surprised to suddenly see that in the headlines?
I was, we don't hear about those anymore either. It seems like, all this stuff from the 80s is like making a resurgence. Maybe abductions will come back. And I want to make it clear too, Jimmy, like when I say that this person said they're done, we clearly don't know that for a fact. There could be people out there having those experiences like you said right now. So I don't want to take that away from them. But in mass, we're not seeing it like we used to. And you do have to kind of wonder, was this a sociological thing? Back when these things were big and it's just not a thing anymore? Or are the abductions not happening? I don't know. Same with cattle mutilations. There could be a million different reasons for what happened to those poor animals. Some very prosaic and some possibly extraterrestrial. Who's to really know? The law enforcement who are investigating it, even the FBI, can't find answers.
Mhm.
So you do truly have to wonder. So I don't know. I
Yeah,
honestly can't tell you.
yeah, and I think missing time has a lot. Probably, I don't know for sure, of course, but that the missing time part of this, you see a craft, and then 4 hours later, your memory comes back.
Mhm.
Then, so what happened during those 4 hours?
Right.
And the abduction phenomenon probably hasn't gone anywhere. It's just a new methodology, right? A new method to the madness
Yeah.
that has fixed some of those total recall. Because even going back to Betty and Barney Hill, they still had to be regressed. They saw something and they remember, a little bit, but it wasn't until the regression that everything came back. Travis
Mhm.
Walton, on the other hand, that wasn't an intentional abduction, right?
Right.
That was an accident.
Yeah, and then they had to fix him. I love that kind of
Yeah.
evolution in thought on his part. I find that fascinating, and that's what a lot of these people experience, kind of an evolution in thought on what happened to them. While once they thought, I was kidnapped by aliens, now they're thankful that it happened, or some remain resentful. But it's fascinating nonetheless.
Okay, here you go.
Okay.
Get your own damn cigarettes.
Ah, yep, yeah. So this was one that happened to a gentleman, Ron Slotnick, in Canada, and he's had a lot of different sightings. I think I cover one, two, maybe possibly three of his experiences in the book. And I remember his dad sent him out to get him cigarettes at the local store, sent him out at least once a week to do this and whatnot. And on one of these trips out to get the cigarettes, he had a very dramatic UFO sighting near an airport of all places. So your mind immediately goes, "Oh, an airport. It was probably a plane. Like he just misidentified it." No, definitely not the case. Whatever this was, we're talking like lights in the sky, but very dramatic, very orb-like, moving intelligently, independent of one another, almost like this choreographed dance of these lights in the sky. Um, and immediately, Ron goes home and tells his dad about this. And as they're talking about it on the news, like dozens and dozens of other people we're seeing these things and talking about it live on the news. And Ron was so scared and affected by all this that he told his dad straight up in that moment, "Get your own damn cigarettes next time." So, yeah, again, I had so much fun, Jimmy, titling these things, and that's what really brings out the humanity in a lot of these cases. It's not just like, oh, the light incident of Canada. No, I wanted to give these people like character in the titles of their stories, and that was one of them for sure. Get your own damn cigarettes, Dad.
Last night, and I love it just like the get your own damn cigarettes, when you least expect it, right? So last night, and I tell these stories so frequently now that, and it's to me, it's almost a daily occurrence. Part of it is where I live. I live in Palmdale next to Skunk Works, and there's a lot of dramatic stuff happening all the time. But last night, man, all right, I'm just going to share this very brief. I'm getting ready for bed. I just got back from Las Vegas, right? And I'm working, and now I'm tired. And I step out, second floor. I have a balcony off of my bedroom, so I open up the sliding glass door and I go out there. It's starting to warm up here in the desert. It's a nice night, and I just look to my left. Nothing really caught my eye, but I just happened to just kind of like look out to my left, which is north, and man, as I live and breathe, right behind this tree, this bright, it's low, it's behind this tree, this light pops out, and it's going to the east. And I went, oh, okay, all right. But I didn't see it on the other side of the tree, right? So anyway, but it's like genuinely frigging bright and low and big. And so it's going like this. I went, okay, all right, whatever. No, I'm not getting sucked in, right? That's televised. I'm okay, but I keep my eye on it, and this friggin' thing turns, right? It just turns, and it just comes back and comes. Oh, now as it's getting over, it was heading that way at first, right? And it turns and it comes back, and this is what I said to myself: please have aircraft lights. Please have aircraft lights. Please have aircraft lights. I don't need this right now. I do not need this right now. And it just went right over. Just a white ball. Just went right over. No, no green, red, flashing, nothing. And, and it just kept going. And I was like, I was going to run in. I was going to grab my cell phone. It's like, I just don't need this, man. Mick West is going to debunk my shit. And, I just don't need the drama. But and I just watched it go over, and no flashing lights, no noise. I thought it was something landing at Edwards. That's what I thought. Edwards Air Force Base out here was low, but it turned, came back over, went right over my head and back over my house heading west. So it was going east, and then elevated up, and then like made a U-turn, and then went straight out west. But
that's crazy, man. So you're going to be in my next book, then, is what you're trying to tell me.
Exactly. I was Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. I was clicking my heels 3 times.
Bring me home.
Please have navigation lights. Please have navigation.
Dude, I get it. I've been there. Like, no matter how long we've been in this field, no matter how many stories we've told, when you become a part of the story, it's very unsettling. And I'll make this brief. I spent a weekend in the woods with a group of UFO abductees. This is a few years back in Lake Placid up in New York. It was like a weekend retreat, and I wanted to put myself, straight smack dab in the middle of a group of experiencers and see if anything happened. It was like this experiment I wanted to do. So I spent the weekend with these experiencers. I heard their stories. It was very emotional, powerful weekend for sure. But then when I went to bed that night, I was on the second floor of this cabin in the middle of the woods, and I hear a tapping on my outside window, and I distinctly remember looking out that window, the morning before that, and there's nothing out there. There's no trees, so it wasn't a branch tapping the window, nothing like that. And then under my closed door, I could see like faint light and footsteps moving under the door, and everyone was asleep that I knew of that night. And that was a moment, man, where I'm like, why did I do this to myself? I just put myself in a possibly life-altering experience of getting abducted. And there were a few moments where I was just laying in bed, frozen, saying to myself, like, please don't be abducted. Please, like, I can't, I don't know what I was thinking by doing this. I was not abducted, at least not to my knowledge. But it was a moment where a lot of people say, like, oh, I want to see a UFO, or I want to get abducted.
Right.
And I'm sure the people who've had these experiences, myself included, would say, no, you don't. Honestly, you don't.
I it's about a year ago. I've never told the story. All right. I get out of the shower and I'm getting dressed, and I'm putting on my socks, and on my left leg, as I pull up the socks, I went, ow, what? And I look down and I pull the socks right about halfway up my calf, on the outside of my right shin, 3 little dots. Like this, 3 little dots, red. And I'm looking, and next to it was a little bit of a fresh bruise, and it was kind of red. And I'm looking down, and I went, no. And I always want, everybody's posting pictures, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Now I've got it. And I looked over at my phone. I went, no, I'm not doing it. No, I'm not going. Now I've had the experience. I'm not going to talk about this. I'm going to ignore it. So I sat on the edge of my bed, and again, now I'm the crazy person on my show, right? I'm becoming the story, and I don't want that to be the case. But I sat on the edge of my bed, full confession, full transparency, everybody. Okay, how did I do this to myself? When did I do this? What did I walk into? And I didn't have those answers. I didn't walk into anything. And I didn't feel it, didn't know about it until I put on the sock. And it hurt, by the way, when my sock went. I like jumped. But I don't want to become part of the story. So I didn't take a picture of it. I don't need, I didn't want to share this experience because I don't know, but just like anybody else that wakes up, man, you see my reaction? I just saw a freaking shadow move. Dude, I don't need this, man. I don't need this, Ryan. Right there. Oh, man.
Get your own damn cigarettes is what it comes down to.
I just swear. All right, let's go to the next one. Here we go. Okay. I want your reaction to this because I have the T-shirt. Okay. All right. Look at the screen.
What is it? Oh, there it is. Yeah. So, like you, big fan of Stranger Things, and Hellfire Club is obviously a big part of that. So when this story came to me, I'm like, this is perfect. Like, Stranger Things just dropped. People are going to be very familiar with this title. There we go. They're going to want to hear about this one. And I didn't know this. I had to look into the actual history of what the Hellfire Club is.
Right.
And it's this place in Ireland. And this guy who came to me with this story lives right near this place, a very fascinating, enigmatic kind of ruins that are out there in Ireland, that a lot of just strange stuff was said to have occurred in the past. Very haunted, a lot of paranormal phenomena there as well. But what he saw was, again, this kind of orb phenomenon one day when he was out there. His where he lives actually overlooks this Hellfire Club, these rolling green hills with these ruins, very, very Irish, very what you would expect. And these orbs were all around the ruins, dancing back and forth all around it. So that one was really, really interesting. And I remember when he told me the story on the podcast. I mean, I live in Scotland. it's hard enough to try to understand some of the actual Scottish people here. The accents are so thick.
Mhm.
But when
Mhm.
he told me this story, this guy is as Irish as they come. And I had to slow it down, his audio, like 90% to actually get the story because he was so excited telling it in his Irish accent, no doubt.
Have
So I
you
had to really work with him on this one to get every word right.
have you seen the new TV show, Citadel?
No.
Okay, all right. I think it's Amazon. That part doesn't matter. So
Okay.
the lead actor, he's a secret agent, whatever, American. And so I decided to the first 2 episodes, or maybe 3, that I get through. And this was last night after I got back from Vegas. So there was what do you call it? The behind the scenes episode wrap up
Oh,
special
yes.
thing,
Yep.
right? So all right, since I don't have another episode, let's watch that. And the lead actor, dude, is Irish. And I was like, wait, what? Dude, his American accent is perfect,
Wow.
right? I couldn't understand a damn thing he was saying. Boy, this guy's really Irish. Oh my
Right.
God. And they were doing cutscenes going back and forth. He's commenting on and they're going back and I'm listening to him. I'm like, dude, yeah, he's a brilliant actor. His English is American. I should say American, not English.
Yeah.
His American is very American. I didn't understand anything he said in his natural
In
accent.
his natural language.
Yeah,
That's so funny. That's like Hugh Laurie. I had no idea that guy was from the UK. I didn't know about his previous work, in the UK and everything growing up. So when I found that out, it was like a mind-blowing moment for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. And when they lay it on, he knows. Hugh Laurie's really good with this.
Mhm.
And a lot of them know that they can just lay it on real thick. So
Yeah.
we don't understand, and because they know we're all in shock. Like, what? Hugh Laurie, what was that? House. That's what
House.
yeah,
Yep.
that was great. Okay, here we go. I had to do this, so I'm gonna do it anyway. It's too great. The bubbling black blob of Fife.
Yeah. So again with the titles, this really stuck out to me. And this actually happened kind of in my new neck of the woods in Scotland. This happened to a gentleman named Tommy in Fife, Scotland. And he and his friend, he was like a teen at the time, back in the early 90s. Um, he was with his friend. They were riding their bikes down the street and they come up to kind of like an oil slick, Jimmy, when in the road where you get these little puddles full of whatever gasoline or whatever from all the cars driving by. Very hot out, so you can see kind of the waves coming off of this oil in the road. So naturally, the boys want to go around this thing on their bike. But as they're getting closer to this quote unquote like oil slick in the road, it's starting to grow the closer they get and expand. And they're like, huh, what's going on here? Is there like an oil leak in the middle of the road? So as they try to get around this thing, it just grows immensely. And not only that, it starts bubbling and boiling right there on the ground. So something's off. Something's weird about this. So they stop and they're just watching this like black blob of what they thought was oil on the ground get really hot, start bubbling, and then it starts to levitate off of the ground. So this black blob ascends into the air and is just floating in midair. And not only that, it started to make this unbearably loud noise, whatever it was. I mean,
Hmm.
Tommy remembers it being like earth shattering noise. And then it started like almost like electricity was coming off of this thing. And they didn't know what to do. They just watched as this bubbling black blob ascended into the sky, getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and then just shot up into the air and disappeared. So this was one of the first episodes of Somewhere in the Skies when he brought me this story, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to use it. I'm like, this
Oh,
is
that's a
too
good one.
strange.
No,
This is too weird.
well, a couple of things come to mind.
Yeah,
One,
yeah, yeah.
the black goo, right? And that whole period of ufology, the black goo, the gray goo, the black goo. So there's that. There's nanotechnology. Could it be that? Terminator, right? The liquid steel. Are we talking about
Right.
something like that can transform and shape? Wow, no, that's incredible. I
It's
love that.
amazing. And like younger me as a researcher was like, that's too weird. No one's gonna like believe that. Whereas now I'm like, no, like that is the story. And the weirder it is, like I said earlier, the more I tend to believe it. Like you can't make something up like the bubbling black blob of Fife. And I just found that story fascinating. It's unlike any UFO story I'd ever heard before. So of course, like
Who's the UFO researcher that had died mysteriously? Max.
oh yeah.
Black goo was involved in that too as well, or there were
Correct.
reports.
They found
Max,
it in his mouth, yeah.
what was his last name? Max. Oh man,
Someone in the chat will know. I actually wrote an article about, mysterious deaths in ufology, and that was one of them, but his last name is Spears. I think it was Spears.
Max
Okay,
Spear.
okay.
Max Spear. That's it.
Yep. Good point.
Yeah. See, yeah. Look how quick the chat room is.
They're
Okay.
on top of it, man.
Yeah, let's keep going. I had one already. Oh man, there is it was, oh, there it is. And you had another one. I'll just mention it. You don't have to tell the story. But I thought it was interesting. I think it was New York, the New York rectangle.
Oh, yeah.
Was that what it was called?
Yeah, there was I had a few New York stories.
But you've got a lot of triangle. You've got geometric
Yeah.
shapes mentioned a lot in the titles.
Yes.
And that particular one is rectangle. I found that it like this next one. Okay, so check this one out, everybody.
There you go. Yep. I mean, a Ferris wheel. So this one happened to a gentleman who some of your audience might be familiar with. He's another UFO podcaster. Andy McGrillen is his name, a Scottish guy living in the UK now. And he has a show called That UFO Podcast. So that was kind of my play on it, that unidentified flying Ferris wheel, because when he was younger, he saw in the skies over here in Scotland as well what he described as a Ferris wheel, this giant thing in the sky just spinning, like spinning stationary in the sky and then moving off into the distance. Huge, massive, completely brilliantly lit up, and it was just rotating, like we hear a lot of these saucer stories as well. So I found that one really interesting too, and that was kind of one of the things that got Andy interested in UFOs, obviously having this very dramatic sighting of a Ferris wheel, and got him into this topic, like it does many of us out there who have podcasts or write books about these things. And yeah, another one out of Scotland that I found really, really interesting.
Yeah, and it just goes back to the dilemma as a host. Do you want to become the story?
Right.
And in journalism, when you're learning the craft and you're in school, that's one of the things that is don't become a part of the story. You can't do that. And so it's a dilemma where I've got a lot of experiences and maybe something recently just happened. Do I just continue just to interview and collect the information? Do I want to do that? And I haven't shared everything. I haven't. It just gets too crazy. Like that thing I talked about with the 3 spots on my leg. There was just no way I was going to. Again, I feel like I'm advertising. But the other part is I don't want to have people call BS. That's an uncomfortable feeling. I don't call BS on people. I'll let the audience make the decision.
Mhm.
But I don't want the audience calling BS on me either, and then suddenly dividing the audience and getting them fighting over it. It's a dilemma. I
It
mean,
is.
what do you do with that? It's tough.
Yeah.
I love this next one, and let's pop it up. And I'm wondering, is this a tic tac?
Very, very close. Yeah. So this one, this happened again, funny enough, to another podcaster.
In New York? This is
In
New
New
York,
York.
I'm
Yep.
assuming, right?
This happened up near the Adirondack Mountains in New York, to a gentleman named Rob Christofferson. He has a show called Our Strange Skies. And I met Rob through podcasting. We became really good friends and colleagues. And I'd heard rumblings that he had his own sighting. So I asked him, "Do you want to tell it on my show?" And he said, I would love to. And he told this story about, working, him and his friend, they worked at a nursing home up there in the Adirondacks. And they were out on a smoke break one day and they look up in the sky, him and his buddy, and they see a egg-shaped craft just floating there in the sky, perfectly egg-shaped. Um, and it just stayed there for a few minutes, floated by, and then shot up in the sky and disappeared. So this was interesting because Rob is probably one of the most encyclopedic UFO researchers I've ever met. Unlike me, he can like go to a date and a location and tell you 10 different UFO stories that have happened there throughout history. Incredible. So he actually likened his experience to the craft scene at the Socorro, New Mexico crash, or excuse me, landing, not
Mhm.
crash, of this oval shaped craft, perfectly white, little appendages. And yeah. So I found that really interesting that, and that's one of his favorite cases as well, because I think it struck a chord with him having had this experience. So, it's interesting. So many of the people that I've met who have like UFO podcasts or are into this stuff have all had an experience of some kind, and that was kind of their origin story of how they got involved with these. And the Adirondack egg was just another example of that.
Yeah, let's talk about Socorro for a second.
Mhm.
If I have me personally, if I have a top 10 or a top 5 or a top 3, right, and you're whittling this stuff down, man, I think Socorro is going to be up there. It's just
Absolutely.
one of those cases. And Roswell, yeah, it is what it is. I think Rendlesham is amazing. We just talked about Travis Walton, but Socorro, New Mexico, this is a situation that I don't think a case, and that includes Rendlesham, I don't think a case has been quite thoroughly as investigated as Socorro.
Yeah.
Roswell's different. That's in mystery. That's a different. That's hidden,
Mhm.
right? But Socorro was a public investigation. That was a blue book case. That was J. Allen Hynek. That was Jacques Vallée. That was the FBI was on the scene. We have the names. We have the list. We have there's a lot of we have the physical, the trace evidence. There's a lot of stuff supporting the Socorro case. It's way up there. But then when we step back, you have to go, dude, was that a tic tac?
Yeah.
Wait. There's some crazy. And so for you, if I'm going to say that about Socorro, do you have a top 1, 2, 3 case list for yourself?
Oh, throughout history?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For me, I go to the Tehran incident actually. That's probably my favorite one. One of the most well documented cases out there of Parviz Jafari, a Iranian fighter pilot who chased a UFO, had a very dramatic sighting incident. I did a whole episode on the case back in the day where I actually read on air the FOIA documents that I got from the Department of Intelligence on this case, and it reads like a sci-fi
It does.
novel. It truly does. I was blown away, and I have John Greenwald to thank for that. He was the one who directed me in the right agency to get those files.
So much documentation there.
Yeah.
And if you look at Arrow or ATIP or any other, official group that is looking into this now, where they're looking at the military side of things, I would point them in two directions immediately. I would say, okay, what the hell happened at Rendlesham? That was the United States Air Force case. Tons of paper. We got all the stuff that you need. Why aren't you looking into that? And the other one is Tehran.
Yeah.
Because the United States Air Force was completely involved in that from the get-go.
Yes, they were. I mean, the minute he got off his flight after chasing that, there were intelligence officers from the U.S. on the tarmac interviewing him and wanting to know what happened. Because, we were leasing our planes to Iran at the time, and a UFO outmaneuvered it, shut down its weapons system. So they wanted to know what did that to a U.S. built aircraft. Stunning case, and I mean, Parvis went to his grave, telling this story and striving for legitimacy about what happened there, and all the credit to him, man. He went to the grave not knowing what truly happened, but getting the story out there and preserving it for the rest of us to possibly continue investigating. Will we ever know what it was? Probably not, but we have it, and that's what's most important.
Well, yeah, it's been so well documented and told, but for me, there were 2 or 3 telling moments in that case. 1, he had lock on. 2, he was going to shoot it down. 3, he was going to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
He pulled the trigger, and the electronics shut down on the aircraft. And this is all documented stuff. And that the sighting and the thing and the radar and the United States Air Force and the debriefing and all of that, and the radar and the ground control and why he was scrambled to begin, all of that is there. But we are talking about a moment of lock on, armed, pull the trigger. 3 things. That's nuts. That's a pretty big part of this case. Pretty big part. All right, I've got one more, and I'm glad that you reminded everybody of that case. We want to go with Malmstrom and Travis Walton, all great. Yes, Roswell. Yes, I get all of that. Phoenix Lights, but there's other cases out there that are ginormous. I don't think Rendlesham gets the recognition that it should either. In our UFO community, possibly. But for the rest of the world and now I think Rendlesham is that case because everybody's still alive, even though it's 40 years. What are we up to now? 43 years ago.
Yeah.
But everybody's still with us, and they're all our good friends, and of course you too as well. And those witnesses are right there. Okay, here is the next one, and might be the craziest of them all. So here we go. I want your reaction.
Oh, yeah. So this is in a section of the book deemed Close Encounters. So I broke the book up into 3 sections. You've got sightings, close encounters, and military incidents. And this one was in the close encounters one because this happened to a guy, Patrick, who was in New Jersey at the time. At a river there. I believe he was fishing with some friends. So that comes up a lot in ufology too. I had my sighting while I was fishing. You've got the famous Pascagoula incident where they were fishing. The Allagash, it's endless. So talk about patterns. There's definitely something there.
Yeah, there is. There really
there is. But this was a case, again, unlike anything I'd really heard before, where UFOs had been sighted in this area in New Jersey for a really long time. And he and a buddy were out there hiking, fishing, all that stuff, all that woodsy stuff you do in New Jersey. And they saw these UFOs overhead. And then it's what they saw on the ground that really, really stunned them. And that was what they called the Mantis Man. in the world of UFOs, we hear all the time about reptilians and stuff like that. Even mantis creatures. We've heard this in the abduction lore for a very long time. But this was not an abduction by any stretch. This was just a close encounter. They saw standing upright near this river a humanoid figure, not humanoid. I mean, it was standing upright, but it did not look human at all. It was a huge mantis just staring at them. And this was a moment that Patrick and his friend, they sort of described it as, how did he put it? Spiritual, but also very dark. They weren't sure what to make of it, but they knew that this had something to do with God. And I found that fascinating because you don't hear that often when it comes to these mantis creatures. Usually it's like they're evil or maybe they're demonic or something like that. But these guys actually felt that it was miraculous in a way, that they
Wow.
were seeing this for a different reason. So yeah, again, a lot of the stories in this book, they don't go in the direction you think they're going to go. And that's what, again, makes me feel that these are more human than we can possibly imagine. The interpretation of the experiences are
Right.
weird
Right.
and unexpected and messy and scary and beautiful and everything in between. And this was an example of that. You would expect a story about the Mantis Man to be absolutely terrifying, and it is. But at the end of the day, these guys took a very positive approach to the experience. So yeah, the Mantis Man of New Jersey is definitely one. I'm missing a million details of the story, so I hope people will check it out in the book. But
Yeah, get the book.
memorable,
Uh,
memorable nonetheless.
the links are below. You can go to Amazon, and we've got it over on our website and everything. But stories from somewhere in the skies. Here's the thing. Over and over again, and I don't know the connection here, but when you picture a mantis being, when somebody's telling about their experience, dude, it's pretty damn frightening. It's something I don't want. But everybody says, no, man, actually, the mantis dudes were pretty cool. And it doesn't make any sense. But when you look at a praying mantis, right, and I see them all the time out here in the I do. Nothing looks more alien or ET on planet Earth than a praying mantis. And it's an easy visualization. But I haven't heard too many negative stories that the the mantis beings have always been the intelligent ones in these encounters.
Right. Yeah, I know. You look at like the Greys as like these emotionless, robotic, soulless things that don't care about what they're doing to human beings. Where you would expect them to be like the cute little Greys, that
Yeah,
are like just visiting. But
playing with you. Yeah.
yeah, but that's clearly not the case.
No, it's not the case. It's the gray ones. It's the silent gray ones that you need to worry about.
It's always the quiet ones. Yeah.
Hey, Ryan, don't be a stranger, my friend. And the book is a great read, everybody. The links are below. Congratulations to your success. And I look forward to our next conversation. Thank you so much, Ryan. Behave.
My honor, Jimmy. Thank you as always.
The very best. Ryan Sprague, Somewhere in the Skies. And the book is Stories from Somewhere in the Skies. Again, the links are below, and you can go and visit Ryan's website. And, of course, check out his podcast, Somewhere in the Skies. Dude is getting it done. Thank you so much, Ryan. And so with that, I've got a very busy week coming up on Fade to Black. I'll see everybody tomorrow night. This week, we've got the Spear of Destiny. We've got Artificial Intelligence. We're also wrapping up the week with Billy Carson. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Thank you to Dennis and Kevin. Dennis hanging out in the chat room tonight. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldridge. Intro, Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network, and this broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2023 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Until tomorrow night, I want you to be safe. Go back, Lee Tappy.